You're back with us here on the Newsfeed Late Night. Trade unions, BEMAWU and Communications Workers Union say that more than 500 people could lose their jobs in the SABC retrenchment process, which is 200 more than anticipated. For more on this, I'm joined now by the Communications Workers spokesperson, Aubrey Tshabalala. Aubrey, good evening and thank you very much for joining us tonight. Now, earlier on in the year when we were talking about this conversation, you were saying you were still going to quantify exactly what will be the number of those who will lose their jobs. You've gone through that process. Does it indicate to you who they are, what position they're holding, where they are stationed, and what this would mean?
Good evening, Thabo, to the viewers of Newzroom as well. Well, actually, we entered into a process that is very flawed, precisely because it's presided by people that are highly dishonest, which is the executive of the SABC and the board. We're saying this because they are not consistent with what they are saying to the public and the parliament. A number of things have been raised, a number of discrepancies have happened. The first point is that they've told the public and the parliament that only 301 workers will lose their jobs, provided we agree to some of their conditions, which include, amongst others, the cut of salaries, the freeze of salaries. All this happened to the lower level staff except them. But we know today that over 270 people have already taken the voluntary severance packages, which will simply mean, logically, only 30 people should be forcefully retrenched. But we have over 500 people now that are receiving letters of retrenchment, even though they've indicated that the process should have somehow summarized by the end of February. I'll make one of those examples, but the second one is that on the discrepancies. In Western Cape, for example, there were allegations of racism, that there was a particular group of a race that was targeted by this retrenchment. And when workers raised the flag around that, those letters were retracted. Last week again, one of the prominent news anchor was, after his shift at 6:30 in the evening on Friday, was called for an interview that takes place at 8 p.m. And they had to wait. And going to that interview, only 4 questions were asked, and he was told to go home. So there's a number of things that are happening, including the changing of the letters. You remember they have 2 types of letters. One is the supplement, the other one is redundant, and they tell you that if you are on the supplement one, you can be able to contest for your position. But throughout the process, then they send you the second one to say your services will be terminated without any notice, without any interview, and so forth. So this is a clear indication that we have people that are just gunning to cut heads, no plan in it, no skills assessment, and which this will plunge SABC into a deeper crisis.
So almost 300 more, that's what you're saying, are expected to actually lose their jobs from the 301 or so that was initially mentioned.
From where we are standing, it could be more than that. Remember, here we are able to only assess limitedly to the members of the union, and of course, we can call our sister union BEMAWU. But what about those who are not affiliated to unions, who are receiving the same letter, or might not have raised these issues to us? But in addition, we also have issues of Section 197 in the Department of TV Licensing, which will mean that that chunk of workers will be moved out of SABC, handed on the silver platter to the private sector so that they can continue to loot. This is a challenge that we are facing, is just to cripple the SOE. Ultimately, few individuals will be the beneficiaries.
Yeah. Now, there was, of course, the idea that some have been made redundant because those positions are occupied by more than one person, and therefore those who are being retrenched will have an opportunity to reapply for other positions. Have those positions been advertised?
Firstly, their system was flawed. People could not access the intranet to apply in time. Others are trying to apply. Whilst you are waiting to be called for an interview, get a letter to be dismissed. Secondly, areas like your SAFM, for example, it will remain with males only editors, senior editors, which is another sign of not really assessing your workforce correctly, because we have to take into accountability issues of equity there, which is not being observed. But thirdly, where are these positions and who are these people? Because to this point, Thabo, they have not given us the list as we have requested. So we are doing our own investigation on our own. So these secret dealings that they are dealing behind the closed doors, it's a clear indication that theirs is to cut jobs. And unfortunately, when you look at the side of the parliament, you find that they somehow getting a support. And we're telling you that right now, such a board, it has a political support. You didn't find a board that will just undermine the minister, just undermine the portfolio committee and forge ahead with what everyone is opposing. Clearly, they have a support in the ruling party, and that's our assessment of things.
Now, some labor law experts suggest, Aubrey, that those who are retrenched and feel, as you're mentioning, that the process is flawed and they're being unfairly treated, can take this matter up with the CCMA. What's your feeling on that?
Well, that's the only remedy that we have, amongst others, that will be in terms of legal. Whilst my feeling really to tell you about it is that the Labour Court perpetually has been defending profits. And if we're not saying this as workers, we'll find ourselves in crisis. The only cases that workers are doing well at Labour Court is those individual cases. But if you can look at the cases that talks to Section 197, which is an outsource, talks to Section 189, Labour Court have been entrenching a reversal of all the gains that have been made within the Labour Relations Act. So it's another issue that we have to deal with in the neoliberal state. But having said that, of course, we are collecting the information in as far as SABC matter is concerned, so that we can drive this project in terms of defending jobs. And it could take time. Remember, if workers lose their job end of this month, the CCMA process, the Labour Court process might take its own time, and at that point in time, a worker is suffering.
And at this point, are the doors of communication completely closed? In other words, there is no communication that is happening between yourselves as the unions and management at SABC at this point?
The management of SABC have never opened doors except to say they wanted to fulfill the legal obligation in terms of Section 189. They sat in the meetings and they never listened. They never engaged. You remember, we've complained since June last year. All what they've done is that they've made sure that they cover the 60 days, they cover the 4 meetings requirement, but in essence, there was never a negotiations. And when that point of extension came to an end, they basically shut the door. The people who persuaded and tried to bring sense to management of SABC and the board was the Minister of Communication and the Minister of Labour. And even that happened. SABC management never listened. So that's why we think that they have that strong support politically so that they can go ahead to do this thing. Our fear is that it's not going to end here. Those who are feeling safe now or who might be safe now will be next on the line, because the plan is clear, is to outsource a number of SABC component and is to put people on what we call the freelancer position so that they can continue to exploit and take money out of SABC. And that is a challenge that we are facing. All what we are seeing on other SOEs happening is exactly what is happening. And this time around, no one can claim in government that they were not made aware of challenges that are happening at SABC. We have marched to the president, and we expect that a swift response could have come so that we can be able to engage on these issues.
Yeah. I mean, at this stage, Aubrey, it seems like are you throwing in the towel? What are you saying? What is your next move? Because, as you put it, the 3-month process didn't yield any results. The minister's interventions and whole alternatives, even though the SABC said, yeah, we're keen on looking at the alternatives, but they have actually not looked at them. Where are you sitting right now?
Throwing a towel is not an option. We are coming in a situation where the SA Stats have just reported over 11 million people are jobless. those are people that are still seeking for employment. We are not talking about those who have already given up. So throwing a towel is not an option for us as a trade union movement. As I've indicated, we are collecting this information precisely to embark on the legal process, but the fight must still continue in all spheres. We are also we're raising our flag to say, last week the Parliament Portfolio Committee allowed SABC to just present lies without allowing a union to respond to those lies. And we think that we need a space to engage in that particular space so that we can raise these issues. People are getting letters on a daily basis now because they've been given a free flow. And what appears to us is that some of our leaders in high level of politics, they don't want to confront serious confrontational issues. They want to get better news, and that's why some of them are embracing and saying, at least if they cut salary, there is a salary freeze for 3 years, there will only be 300 workers. That's not true. As we speak now, over 500 workers are facing the X from SABC. And again, what they've done in the public sector, through Itombowen, that there will be no salary increase, they are clandestinely introducing it at SABC by saying, for the next 3 years, let's cut labor power. There will be no negotiations. Management will do as they please. And these are the austerities that we are facing as a trade union movement in the SOEs.
Spokesperson, therefore, the Communication Workers Union, Aubrey Tshabalala, saying close to 500, in fact, more than 500 workers at the SABC facing the X should this process continue. We'll keep an eye on that. Aubrey, I appreciate your time and thank you for joining us tonight here on the Newsfeed Late Night. We'll recap for you what's leading in the news, plus a look at stories further afield. Do stay with us.